Hello everyone, and welcome to a new Celeste any percent tutorial series. I'm going to be going over the strats for all of the chapters in the any percent run. And for this video, before I get into Forsaken City, I'm just going to go over the fundamental speedrun strats that you'll be using very frequently throughout the run. So if you've been watching other runs, you'll have noticed that the way that you move in this game isn't just about jumping and dashing. There are a lot of ways that you can combine your jump and dash in order to perform new techniques that are faster than just the basic movement actions. So probably one that you may have discovered on your own, probably the most basic speedrun technique, is the super dash, also known as the dash jump, where essentially you just dash forward, but you jump out of your dash before the dash ends, and that causes you to just preserve the dash momentum throughout your jump. So normally if you dash forward, you move quickly during the dash, but then your speed just ends at the end of the dash. But if you jump out of it, it just persists. And another very similar technique, sort of a variant of the super dash, is the hyper dash, where instead of dashing straight forward like you would with the super dash, you dash diagonally into the ground. So you can't really see it when I'm on the ground, but like if you look at my keyboard inputs, for example, you can see how I'm dashing at a diagonal angle directed into the ground, and you can also tell due to the fact that I'm crouching during the dash. So if you jump out of that diagonal dash instead of a forward dash, you go forward very quickly. Let me drop this fairy, I didn't want to pick that up. But you go even faster, but you'll notice you don't go nearly as high. So if you dash diagonally into the ground and jump, you get a very large forward momentum boost with less height than the super dash. So this is one of the fastest methods of moving in Celeste, and it's probably the technique that you'll be using most often throughout the speedrun, just because you pretty much want to be using this at every opportunity to just move as fast as possible. And so like I said, it doesn't go nearly as high as a super dash, which means there are some situations where if you need to clear a raised platform, you'll have to do a super dash instead. So it's mostly about balancing those two techniques for whichever one's fitting. In most cases, you can do a hyper dash, especially along flat platforms like these platforms in Resort. But another sort of variant of the hyper dash is known as the wave dash, and essentially hyper dashing doesn't require you to dash along the ground. It just requires that you jump out of a diagonal dash, which means that even if you're in midair, you can jump into the ground or dash into the ground and then jump when you hit the ground. And so that means that instead of if you're already falling, instead of waiting to hit the ground and then hyper dashing, you can just fall and then wave dash, and that's slightly faster. Also, something very important to note about super dashes, hyper dashes, and wave dashes is that if you do it immediately, you'll notice my hair is blue, which means that I did not get my dash back like from this hyper dash. I didn't get my dash back from this super dash, and I didn't get my dash back from that wave dash. And in order to restore your dash from one of these special types of dashes, you need to delay the jump, because you'll notice during the dash, like my hair turns white during the dash, which indicates that it's like during the dash that if you jump too early, you lose the dash. But if you wait just a little bit before you jump, you'll notice my hair is red now, so I do have my dash. So you just delay the jump slightly after either dashing forward or diagonally, and you get your dash back. And this is known as extended super dashes or extended hyper dashes. People don't usually mention extended wave dashes because wave dashes by nature, since it takes time to hit the ground, you'll almost always get your dash back if you do a wave dash. Like you have to do a really short hop and a very short jump in order to not get your dash back from a wave dash. So if you find it inconsistent, with getting your dash back from a hyper dash, you can opt to use a wave dash instead, just to make it easier to time. With practice, you'll be able to get extended hyper dashes more easily, and you're not going to be able to do a wave dash instead at every opportunity. Plus the time it takes to jump to do a wave dash does cost you a small fraction of a second, but that can add up if you're wave dashing instead of extended hyper dashing when you could just extended hyper dash. So those are the main sort of forward moving techniques, but there's also a very important technique for moving upward known as wall boost or wall bounce or vertical hyper. There are lots of different names, but essentially the way these work is, one second, gotta go to a wall where I can do it. I think there's a good wall over here. So essentially with wall bounces or wall boosts, you do the same thing that you do with a dash jump, where you jump out of your dashing state, but you instead do it while dashing upward and doing a wall jump. So you need to line yourself up with the wall and then dash up and then jump out of it. And you notice you get a very big upward boost from this. And unfortunately there's no way to restore your dash from a wall boost. So in situations where you want to like wall jump and then do a dash, you'll have to hold on to that dash. But for clearing like vertical pathways especially, wall boosting is faster than just climbing the wall. Plus there are certain situations where you need to like get up to a raised platform that's too high for you just to wall jump to. And so you can wall boost instead to wall jump higher. And so super dashes, hyper dashes, wave dashes, the extended variants of those, and then wall boosts are sort of the key movement techniques in Celeste. These are the ones that you're going to be using all the time, that you should try to get 100% consistent with, because they're crucial. There's really no way to leave these out of your runs because they're just too important not to be used. But beyond that, there are a lot of other techniques that you'll probably want to pick up later after you've first learned the run, because these strats or these techniques are a little more difficult and aren't as universal in the run. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the ultra dash, which is a method of going even faster than a hyper dash. So usually hyper dash is the fastest way to move unless you can get like a boost from a moving block in certain levels. But essentially the way dashing works in terms of like pre-existing momentum is that if you already have some forward momentum and then you dash either forward or diagonally up, that dash momentum will add to your current momentum rather than like just completely overriding your momentum like an up dash does. Like if I hyper and then dash straight down, you'll notice the down dash just completely cancels out all my forward momentum. But you'll notice if I dash like that, I have a little more momentum than if I just jumped forward and did that. And that's because the speed of that upward diagonal dash is my hyper momentum plus the dash momentum. And same goes with the forward dash. But you'll notice also that at the end of that dash, I don't have any momentum anymore. The momentum's just gone and I'm just slowly falling forward. And that's because at the end of a forward dash or diagonal upward dash, the game just kind of drops your momentum back down to normal left and right movement speeds. So you can't just keep dashing forward to build up unlimited momentum, because that mechanic's going to stop you. But an exception to this rule is the diagonal downward dash. So a dash directed into the downward like that will add to your momentum and you won't lose it, which means that if you're high up enough off the ground, you can do something like extended hyper and then do an immediate diagonal dash, and you'll notice I went extremely fast right there. This is known as an ultra dash, and it's an even faster way of moving. But some problems with ultra dash is that you need to be able to do a full diagonal downward dash, because if you try and do it against the ground, like try dashing diagonally into the ground while you're parallel to it, you'll just do a wave dash, which is slower than an ultra dash. So in order to really use that ultra momentum, you need to be just at least a few blocks above the ground. Like this isn't a little bit of an extreme case. You don't need to be this high up to do an ultra dash, but you need to be high up enough that you can dash diagonally and then hit the ground after the dash ends so that you don't wave dash. And something important to keep in mind is that you lose momentum faster while you're on the ground than you're in midair. You do lose some momentum over time while in midair, but not nearly as much. So in order to preserve momentum, if you have more than hyper momentum, is to jump immediately upon hitting the ground. So like you'll notice after the ultra, I kind of quickly lose my speed while I'm sliding along the ground. But if I jump immediately after hitting the ground, I keep that momentum for longer. So bunny hopping, is a way to just preserve large amounts of momentum for a longer period of time. And another application of bunny hopping is that like if you want to have hyper momentum, but you also want to go at full jump height, you can do a hyper bunny hop, and you'll notice like it's almost as fast as a hyper, but you also go much higher. So like it's the same height as a super jump, but it's faster than the super jump. So yeah, that's ultra dashing. You won't be using it too often just because there aren't many situations where it's applicable, but I will be showing where you can use ultra dashes throughout the run. And another slightly less common trick is the corner boost, which is one of the more difficult tricks to pull off, especially when you are just using one jump button. You should at some point assign 2 jump buttons, and I'll show you how to do that once I start teaching like spike jumps and things like that. But corner boosts are essentially, the way corner boosts work is when you jump off of a wall, normally you can either like jump away from the wall like that, you can jump up from the wall like that, or you can do a neutral jump, which is where you jump without holding a direction. So there's away, up, and neutral. And so those are sort of the 3 different angles that you can jump at. But if you're at the top 3 pixels of a corner like this, you can actually jump forward from it. And if you have existing momentum and you jump forward at the top 3 pixels of a wall, you'll actually keep all of that momentum. And that allows you to clear corners that would normally get in your way by jumping very quickly. So I think I can do a corner boost off of this corner to demonstrate. Yeah, like you see, if I just hyper here, I crash into this corner. But since I'm hitting the very top of this corner, I can do a very quick jump to just boost over it. And so that allows you to clear certain raised platforms doing hypers instead of having to do like a super or a bunny hop to get over it. And also something to note about corner boosts is that if you corner boost during a dash, and it's a little bit hard to line up, but like that, what I just did there, if you corner boost out of a dash, it's kind of like a super jump where you keep all of that momentum. And in fact, if you, like I said, if you dash while you already have momentum, you'll go faster than the normal dash momentum. And if you corner boost out of that, it's kind of like you're doing an ultra dash with a corner boost. You can go extremely fast if you corner boost during a dash, but there are even fewer situations where you can use that just because of how hard it is to do. But yeah, those are corner boosts. It's one of the harder tricks and one that you'll pick up later on, kind of like ultra dashes. But here's another actually very important trick. I was mentioning how there are 3 different ways to jump off a wall, and neutral jump is a really important one, because essentially, like if you try and just wall jump up a wall, you'll notice, like doing regular wall jumps, if you're holding left or right along the wall, you can't gain any height by repeatedly jumping off the wall. You just go too far, you don't go high enough, and you just lose height with every jump. Of course, you can jump up the wall, which, by the way, is faster than climbing the wall. So if you have an opportunity to jump up a wall, you should do that instead of climbing it. And it uses the exact same amount of stamina as well. So don't be afraid to jump up walls instead of climbing them. It's just faster. But a problem with jumping up walls is, like I said, it uses stamina. So if there's a really high wall that you can't that you don't have enough stamina to climb, then you'll just run out of stamina and then you'll fall back down. But something unique about neutral jumping, which is jumping without holding the direction, it's higher and it doesn't go as far off the wall, which means you can repeatedly neutral jump up a wall like this. And this doesn't cost any stamina. There are a few situations in which there's a really high wall that you don't have enough stamina to climb, but you can neutral jump up it and essentially have unlimited stamina. And this one takes practice because in order to do repeated neutral jumps like that, you need to not be holding left or right when you jump off the wall, but then you have to immediately hold left to go back to the wall after the jump. So it's kind of just a pattern of jump, hold, release, hold, like that. And you can kind of just look at my keyboard monitor to see how I'm making sure that I let go of right before I press jump, and then I press right again right after I press jump. And this just takes practice. It's one of the things that just comes down to muscle memory. And once you get it consistently, it just comes naturally pretty much. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it. Those are all of the sort of big fundamental techniques that you can use at many points throughout the run. And for some of the harder ones like corner boosts, ultra dashes, and neutral jumps, I'll be showing the specific uses of those techniques when I go over the separate chapters. So before I go, there are a few techniques that I almost forgot to mention. The first one involves another additional technique that can be used alongside dash jumps, hyper dashes, and wave dashes. And this is known as reversing. So reversing a hyper dash, reversing a dash jump or super dash, and reversing a wave dash. And essentially the way these work is that the direction that you hyper or a super or a wave dash, whatever, isn't determined by the direction that you dash, but is rather determined by the direction that you jump. Which means that if you dash in one direction, but then jump in the opposite direction, it'll actually send you in the other direction. So you noticed I dashed to the right, but then I jumped to the left, which causes me to hyper to the left. And you can do the same thing for dash jumps, or super dashes, that, as well as wave dashes, though it's a little tough with wave dashes because you have to time the reversal and all. And you may be wondering, like, how is that useful? Because you could just, like, if you want to hyper to the left, you could just hyper to the left. Why would you reverse it? Well, the most common use for reversing is in situations like this. Like, I mean, you're not going to end up here in an actual run, but in situations where you're on a very small platform that isn't long enough for you to extended hyper off of, so like I can't extended hyper off that platform, which means I also can't extended super or extended wave dash. But what you can do is you can actually reverse it like that, and you'll notice I have my dash back. And the reason for that is because with extensions, so with extended hypers and supers and things like that, whether or not you get your dash back doesn't depend on the distance you travel, but rather how long you wait before you jump, which means that even if you dash into a wall like this, you can still delay the jump long enough that you get your dash back when you do the reverse. So if you dash into the wall and then jump away from the wall with the same kind of timing that you would do with an extended hyper or super, then you'll get your dash back even though there's not enough space for you to do it normally. So in situations with small corners like these, you can do a reverse hyper in order to get your dash back. And you can also do it with wave dashes, though in situations like these you don't really need to do it with a wave dash since a hyper works just as well. And you can do it with supers. So yeah, those are reversals. There are a few situations where you might be a little too close to a wall, like hyper over it, for example. So you might want to, like, well, this is a bad example because this corner is in the way. But if you want to get a little further away from a wall before you try, like, hypering over it, you can do a reverse to get a little further to the left. But yeah, those do have a few uses, less so in situations like these and more so in situations where you're backed up against the corner. But something that I said I was gonna show later on, but I think I might just show it now, is spike jumping, which has only a few uses in the run, one of which is in Resort, so I'm just going to show you that right now so you can practice it. But let me find the room where it's used, because Resort's a pretty big level. Down here. All right. So in this room in Resort, right here. So essentially, the way that spikes actually work in the game is that they won't kill you if you're moving in the same direction that they're pointing. So if I'm moving to the left, you'll see like I'm technically touching these spikes, but I go right through them because I'm moving in the same direction that they're pointing. And the reason why that behavior is programmed into the game is so that like you'll often find like platforms that you can go up through that have spikes on them, but you can go up through the spikes, and like that's an intended mechanic. Same goes for like dream blocks in Old Site. Some of them have spikes on one side of them, which means you can only go through them in one direction. But you can come out the spiked side because you're going in the same direction as the spikes. And due to that behavior, you can actually, if you're moving against the spikes, you can actually wall jump off of corners like these. So like with this, for example, like you saw, I just wall jumped off this corner. And like that. And this one's a little tough to line up if you don't come from the previous room. But basically the gist of it is that you jump, and then right when you're like raising the corner, you can do a wall jump. And this is another situation where having two jump buttons is helpful, because like if I try doing it with one jump button, I have to let go of the button and then press it again, which means I can't get full jump height. So while it is possible to do this spike jump with just one jump button, as you can see, I'm kind of struggling with it because I'm not used to doing it that way. But it's a lot easier with two jump buttons because you can just hold the first and then press the second at the right moment. And after I'm done demonstrating all the mechanics here, I'll show you how you can mod your settings files to add additional button combinations. Because normally you can only assign one jump button, but you can edit your settings file to have more. And this is completely allowed in the speedrun because it's not like a macro or anything. You're just reassigning keys. And there's also one more technique. This one's a very advanced one, but I'll show it anyway. And this is a very recently introduced technique known as the demo dash. It's a technique discovered by a runner named Demo Jameson, that's the name. And essentially what it allows you to do is it allows you to shrink your hitbox while dashing. So I'll go to the room in Resort where the demo dash is applied, which is this room over here. And I'll right here and skip this cutscene. Oh. And essentially what demo dash is, so like I said, it allows you to shrink your hitbox during a dash. And the reason why that's useful is because there are some gaps, like 1 block wide gaps, that you normally can't fit through if you just dash normally, but if you shrink your hitbox, you can actually squeeze through those gaps. Also, in this case right here, there is actually a gap between these dust bunnies that you can only fit through if you shrink your hitbox. In fact, while it doesn't look like it, all spikes in the game have hitboxes that are smaller than their sprites, which allows for a little extra lenience when grazing past them. And that also means that in cases like these, when you have a lot of like spikes, like these dust bunnies are technically spikes, they're the same thing as like the circular spikes that you find in Summit and places like that. There's actually small gaps between each of them. And if there's a gap that's at least 4 pixels wide, you can dash through that gap using a demo dash. So essentially the way that you input a demo dash is extremely precise, but essentially while you're in midair, you have to press down and then immediately dash forward. And I don't even think I got it that time. Like that was a demo dash right there. So you have to tap down, then immediately dash forward. And you'll know you got a demo dash if the white trail in your dash is like at your feet instead of like at the middle of your body like that. So these are normal dashes. That's a demo dash, so you'll notice the white trail is lower. And if you do a demo dash like that, then your hitbox will be smaller and you can fit through those tiny gaps. And since the input is really precise, there is actually a way that you can rebind your button inputs to actually, like, essentially demo dash on command. Like, I have my semicolon button just set to be the demo dash button, and I can pretty much demo dash whenever I want, so you don't have to worry about the inputs. But I'll just show, this is the most important use of demo dash. There are a few others. But if I line up this jump, because even with free demo dashes, this trick can be pretty tough. But if I get it, like, you'll see I just dashed right through that. And that's because I can shrink my hitbox by using the demo dash. And so I'll explain, also, one last thing you can do with the demo dash, because you're considered crouching during the demo dash, you can actually, like, hyper from a forward dash, like that. It's like, normally if you're, like, dashing into a raised platform, and then you dash forward and jump, it'll be a super dash because you're dashing forward. But demo dash actually causes you to hyper, so, like, that hasn't really been used often in runs, so we haven't really found too many great places to use it, but it is another use for demo dash. And so I'll show you both how to assign the demo dash button as well as a second jump button in just a moment. So I'll see you then. So what I have here is the Celeste settings file, which you can find. It's in the saves folder, which is in the same directory as the executable for Celeste. So you can either, like, right click a shortcut to Celeste if you have it, and then go to the file location, or I'm pretty sure you can browse the local files in Steam. This is the directory that I have. It might be the same for you as well, depending on what OS you're on. But this essentially contains all of the different settings as well as button assignments that you have. And so you can edit this file to add additional controls to certain actions. So I'm going to show you how to assign extra jump buttons first. So if you're on keyboard, you can go down and you could do, like, Control F if you want to find the jump input right here. And so normally you'll only have one keys line here, which will be whatever key you have assigned to jump. But all you have to do to assign the digital jump keys is just add another line, and then just do keys, and then you can do whatever you want. Like, I don't know, not A, but you know what I'm saying. So you add keys, and then the name of the key. Certain special keys might have names that you'll, like, have to look up or something. Like semicolon, for example, is OEM semicolon. I'm not sure why. But for simple letter keys, you just put in the letter capital, and that works. Also, space is just space. So yeah, so you just add another line here, and then you can add a second jump button, and that'll help a lot with, like, spike jumps and corner boosts and certain other techniques. If you're on controller, I believe there's button jump, and so you would do the same thing, do buttons, and then you'd add the name of the button here. And I'm not sure what the button names for the controllers are. I don't play on controller, I play on keyboard, but I'd assume A would be the same as maybe A is, well, whatever the default jump button is. B is whatever the default dash button is on your controller. But you'll have to figure out what the names are for those different buttons yourself. There's also, or actually no, I may have reassigned those. You'll have to figure out what the buttons are if you're using controller though. But that's what you would do. You would add another line to this and then use the same format here. To assign a demo dash button, however, to be able to demo dash on command essentially, if you're playing on keyboard, it's a little easier, but if you're playing on controller, you'll actually have to use something like Joy-to-Key or some other program to assign one of your controller's button inputs to a keyboard button. Because essentially what you have to do in order to use a demo dash button is you need to assign an additional down key. So you can't use the arrow keys for a demo dash button. You have to use the secondary key assignment. So you know how arrow keys are always assigned to movement by default, but then you can also assign like WASD or whatever you want to be your other set of keyboard inputs. And in order to do the demo dash button, you have to assign that secondary keyboard key to down. And then if you hold that down key, whatever your secondary down key is, as well as your primary left or right key. So if you were using WASD and arrows, what you would do is you would hold down S, and then you can hold down left or right and press dash, and that'll cause you to just do a demo dash without having to do that frame precise input. And so in my case, since I use WASD normally instead of using the arrow keys normally, is I actually used a different program to reassign my WASD keys to arrows so that I could then assign semicolon as my secondary down button. But if you're on controller, you can pretty much use any key you want since you're not going to be using the keyboard anyway. And then you just hold that button, which will in turn press the key, and then you can just demo dash left or right whenever you want. Or what you can do is you can assign that button to both dash and the down key, so you just press that button to demo dash instead of holding that button and pressing your regular dash button. And that's what I did here. You'll see my dash key, which is right here. You'll see my dash key is assigned to semicolon, as well as my down key is up here. Down key is set to semicolon. So when I press semicolon, it counts as a down input and a dash input at the same time. And if I'm holding left arrow or right arrow, or in my case A or D, since I remapped it, it'll do the demo dash. So that might be a little bit to take in. So assigning a demo dash button like this does make things a lot easier, especially when you get to that one point in Resort where demo dash is just the better strat to use. And there are also other great places to do demo dash where it normally wouldn't be worth it if you were trying to do the combination, the sequence of inputs, since you have only a few frames to do that sequence, and it can be really hard to do consistently. But yeah, those I think are pretty much all of the techniques that you'll find in multiple chapters. For like mechanic specific techniques that deal with certain level mechanics, I'll talk about those when we get into the respective chapters. So the first chapter, of course, is going to be Forsaken City, and I'm going to be going over that next. So I'll see you then. Later.